Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kentucky Small Business Development Center's weekly webinar. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Dave Etkin. I'm the director of the SBDC Center here in Louisville, Kentucky. As you come in and get settled, I'd like to take a few moments to share some information about the Kentucky SBDC program. The Kentucky Small Business Development Center is a statewide program providing professional expertise, tools, and information necessary for entrepreneurs to start, fund, and grow their businesses. We do this at no cost, thanks to the U.S. Small Business Administration, the University of Kentucky, as well as regional universities, colleges, and local economic development agencies. To learn more, visit us at KentuckySBDC.com, and there you'll find additional resources that I know you're going to find helpful. If you'd like to request personal assistance, just shoot us an email at info@KentuckySBDC.com or give us a call at 1-888-414-7232. And as always, if you look to the right of your screen, you'll see the chat feature. So as we go along, if you have any questions for our presenter, you can post them there and we'll answer them at the end of the presentation. As always, just to make sure that everything's working, you can hear me loud and clear and see us. Do me a favor, just say hello and tell us your name and where you're watching from. And it looks like Teresa, hey Teresa, has already popped in, and Saloy, thanks for joining us today. Margaret, how are you? How's the moving business? Again, I'm Dave Etkin. I'm the director here in Louisville. The Louisville Center is one of 17 centers throughout the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Joining us today, we have a great guest, and we've been kind of on a little theme here. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but it is basically on how we work through employee retention, and as we've kind of been learning, employee retention and attraction basically starts with leadership and company culture. And Mayra Phipps is an executive director of the Maxwell team, and she's a certified trainer and coach in leadership development, professional skills, and personal growth. And she's trained and mentored with John Maxwell and his team, and she has a lot of great tools and experience to kind of help you grow in your leadership experience. And more importantly, what we're going to talk about today is communication. I think that as we've all are starting to emerge from our caves over the last year, it's going to be, everybody has to relearn how to communicate, in person, and it could be a little bit of a challenge. So, Mayra, welcome. It's good to see you today, and thanks for coming.
Hello, thank you so much for having me.
So, Mayra, let's just get started and start talking about this communication issue. And I like you came highly recommended, and I like the message here about it's easy to communicate, but it's kind of hard to really connect with that person that you're communicating with.
Yeah, very true. And just, I want to start off by thanking you for giving me the opportunity to speak today. And as you mentioned, my name is Mayra Phipps. I'm a leadership trainer and coach with the John Maxwell team. And I'm very, very excited to speak to you today and share this great content with you. As a member of the John Maxwell team, I have the great honor and privilege of sharing John's teachings and content. Today, I'll be sharing with you a few of the key concepts from John's book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. Now, in fact, there's actually a few things that I'd like to do today. First thing I want to do is to raise your awareness of leadership as a teachable skill. I want to convince you, if you're not already, that we are all leaders in one way or another. And leadership comes down to one thing: influence. Leadership is influence, and influence depends on our ability to connect with people. So second, I'm going to give you something that you can apply to your life right away. I have the privilege of sharing with you one of the greatest skill sets that has helped me and so many others to grow and develop as individuals. So once we complete this workshop, you will have something that you can apply in your business or workplace, and which will make a difference in your career. Now, lastly, not only am I going to give you something that you can use right away, but should you like what you hear today, I'm going to give you the opportunity to continue further. So at the end of the workshop, I will be sharing with you an invitation to join me and continue the journey we are starting today. I'm also going to be sending a very short survey, and it's very simple. It's the main question being if you found the material shared today to be beneficial. One thing I want to say is that some of the things that I'm going to talk to you about today, you might have heard before. I know I've heard some of these things before, but those can be the most dangerous words on the planet. I've heard that before. So as I talk today, what I would like you to do and what I would like to encourage you to do is that when you hear something that you've heard before, don't ask yourself or say to yourself, I've heard that before. But instead, ask yourself, how well do I do that? So if you're taking notes on the top of your notebook, write the question, how well do I do that? Because that's what I want you to ask yourself every time you hear something that you've heard before. The biggest gap in most of our lives is between what we know and what we actually do. Let me say that again. It's very important. The biggest gap in most of our lives is between what we know and what we actually do. So remember to ask yourself, how well do I do that? And then know that if you're not happy with the answer to that question, you will have an opportunity to change it. So let's talk a little bit about leadership, influence, and connecting. You know, at the John Maxwell team, we define leadership like this. Leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Those are famous John Maxwell words. Remember, leadership is influence, nothing more, nothing less. Now, that is contrary to what tradition says. That's contrary to popular belief because if you go to Webster's dictionary, they define leadership as a position, place, office, or title of leadership. So for the most part, the majority of the people that I speak to don't believe that they're leaders unless they have a title or position. But you see, the way that we define it as influence, nothing more, nothing less. And the key is that influence depends on your ability to communicate and connect with people. Only one thing stands between you and greater success in your personal and professional life. It isn't knowledge or skills, experience, or talent. It's your ability to connect with people. In a world where success is increasingly dependent upon collaboration, you must learn to connect with people. It's a common misconception that certain people are born with the ability to connect with other people. The truth is that anyone can learn how to make every communication an opportunity for a powerful connection. Now, if I ask you, how many of you here want to improve your results? Almost every single person would answer yes, and feel free to enter it in the chat. Now, if you didn't answer yes right away and thought about it for a minute, you'd probably say yes too. Because the bottom line is that we all want to improve the results that we're getting in our lives. Now, for a lot of people, it's money or more time, their lifestyle, relationships, or health. But if you want to get better results, you've got to get better at connecting with people. I'm talking about a father or mother, spouse, son or daughter, someone who runs their own business, an employee or manager, a vice president or CEO. It doesn't matter who you are, you can improve your results by improving your ability to connect and influence people in an ethical way. Remember that. It doesn't matter who you are, you can improve your results by improving your ability to connect and influence people in an ethical way. You want to improve your marriage? Connecting better will make a huge difference. You want a promotion? You need to connect better with your boss, your customers, your peers, your team. You want to improve your relationship with your friends? It's all about connecting. We need people. You can't do anything on your own in today's world. We need to be able to connect and influence other people to succeed in this world. The friction that you experience, excuse me, in your day-to-day life comes down to leadership, connecting, and influence. So I want you to think about this for a second. What are your key goals or objectives? All right, so take a second to think about that. Think of a key goal or an objective that you have. Now think about who can help you to achieve those goals. Think about who or what could get in the way. How is it going to affect the other people in your life? Who is impacted by the success or failure of your goal? Who's going to look after the kids if you spend your time working on your goal? So as soon as you start thinking about everything that you do, you realize that in some way, other people are instrumental in how you live your life. To be successful, we need to lead, and to lead, we need influence. 90% of everything that we want to be, do, or have in life is with or through other people. Think about that. 90% of everything that we want to be, do, or have in life is with or through other people. Almost everything we want to become or accomplish in life is with or through other people. So the ability to influence and connect with people are the most important skills that we can master. Now, the great news is that everything that I'm talking about is absolutely 100% teachable skill, which means that you can learn to connect, you can learn to lead, you can learn to improve your ability to influence people. It's a common misconception that certain people are born with the ability to connect. The truth is that anyone can learn how to make every communication an opportunity for a powerful connection. It's within your reach. Now, it might be out of your comfort zone, but it is within your reach. The reason that learning to connect can make such a difference to your results, to all of your results, is that it is such a neglected skill. Most people don't give any thought whatsoever to developing their ability to connect with people, either because they don't see it as a skill or they don't see it as important. And because they don't give it any thought, it's outside of their awareness. They're not conscious of the impact it has on them. And this probably wouldn't be such a problem if people weren't so emotional. Human beings are emotional creatures at heart. We have an intellect. We kid ourselves that we're rational, logical human beings, but that's a facade. We're emotional creatures. Emotions rule our lives. Now, why is this a problem? Well, how many of you have heard something like, he does that if you push his buttons, or you need to know how to get her going? We can all be logical in certain situations, but then there are others that with a certain trigger, they can flip our switch and we can't help ourselves. It's like the red cloud descends and the emotional storm blows through us. Well, John Maxwell's book, Everyone Communicates If You Connect, lays out a powerful learning system, and it's split in two parts: connecting principles and connecting practices. And when those are integrated and applied, these lessons will help to redefine and reinvent your personal, professional, and family relationships. Now, obviously, there's more to connecting that we can cover here today, but I want to at least talk to you about some key points and practices. And if this is something that interests you, if you've decided you're going to improve your people skills, your ability to connect, then you have some tools that you can use right away. You know, John Maxwell has been teaching about leadership, influence, and personal development around the world for over 40 years. He is such a prolific author that he has written well over 100 books, many of them bestsellers. In fact, he is one of only 5 authors worldwide to have 5 of his books go platinum. In 2014, he was identified as the #1 leader in business by the American Management Association and the most influential leadership expert in the world by Business Insider and Inc. magazine. He has had a huge impact on the lives of so many people around the world, me being one of them. Now, one thing I want to share with you is that you don't need to understand why the techniques of connecting work. You just need to understand the principles that underpin them and then apply them. So one of those principles is that connecting increases your influence in every situation. So first principle is that connecting increases your influence in every situation. According to Harvard Business Review, the #1 criteria for advancement and promotion for professionals is an ability to communicate effectively. Jay Hall, PhD of the consulting firm Telemetrics, did a study, and he studied the performance of 16,000 executives and found a direct correlation between achievement and the ability to care for and connect with people. This particular slide shows a few of his findings. I'd like you to notice the column of high achievers. Now, in that column, you will notice that high achievers care about people as well as profits. They seek the advice of those who report to them and actively listen. Where, if you look at the column of low achievers are focused on themselves, do not seek advice, and in fact, avoid communication relying on policy manuals. Now, clearly, the low achievers were not communicating and connecting. In fact, the data shows that they avoided communication when at all possible, preferring to rely on policy. But what does it mean to connect? So connecting is the ability to identify with people and relate to them in a way so that it increases our influence with them. Now, some people connect intuitively. They have high interpersonal intelligence. They seem to value people automatically. Others recognize connecting as important, but lack the tools and techniques that they need to learn to do what others do intuitively. And some people don't recognize connecting as important at all. They might think that they can do it all on their own. They don't need other people. They might tell themselves, why rely on others when it's quicker to do it yourself? Or they'd only let you down anyway. Ever heard that? So now earlier I said that everyone wants to improve their results. So the company owner wants to improve results. The leader wants to improve his results. And everyone in the team wants to improve their results. Everyone wants to improve results, right? But given that we're all different, we can assume that we all want different results. Different things are important to us, aren't they? So we could represent this graphically as an arrow, as it's shown on this slide. This
Hang on, everybody. We had a little technical difficulty, and I think Mayra's going to pop back in here in just a second. So hold on tight. And she was just getting to the good part, too. So how's everybody enjoying it so far? Why don't you put it in the chat and tell me what you think? She should be back on here in just a second. Here she comes.
Hello. Can you guys
Hey.
hear me? So sorry.
Yes, yeah, there you are.
All right, awesome. Okay, so I was just about to ask the question, how do
Mm-hmm.
people get leadership positions, right? Think about that. It's normally based on a technical assessment. The best technician gets promoted to lead the team. Now, the trouble is that leadership and technical skills are two totally different skills. Technical skills are technical skills, and leadership is influence, connecting with people, which comes from valuing people. And technical skills and valuing people are polar opposites. One is left-brained and one is right-brained. The technician simply doesn't see the world that way. If you want people to do what they should, show them the policy manual. A lot of times that's what where their thinking goes. So remember the low achievers column that we looked at a minute ago. The leader who can't connect works harder themselves. And look what happens graphically when that occurs. The leader works 20% harder or 30%. What does it do to the overall effort of the team? It goes up very little, doesn't it? It makes a big difference to him, big difference to his wife and family. He's probably spending a lot more time at work, but very little difference to anything else. But the connector realizes that if they could just get another 10% out of everybody in the team, then it adds up to far more than they can contribute themselves. And as a result, they don't get divorced. Leadership is influence. Leadership is results through others. It's all about others. But the reason connecting is such a skill is that it's more complicated than just saying, okay, I'm going to get more out of others. It's not something that you can just decide or even legislate for. You have to connect. If you recall, I mentioned that anyone can learn how to make every communication an opportunity for a powerful connection. It's really just like any other skill. You need to learn that skill and practice it. That brings me to the next principle. Connecting is more a skill than a natural talent. I love this quote by Ralph Waldo Emerson. All great speakers were bad speakers first. Connecting is something that anyone can learn to do, but one must study communication to improve at it. To connect with others, you must make the most of the skills and experience that you have. And there are several factors that great connectors draw upon to cause people to listen to them. I'd like to share with you 5 of those. So the first one is relationships, who you know. A quick way to gain credibility with an individual, a group, or an audience is to borrow it from someone who has credibility with them. Who you know can open the door for you to connect with someone. Next is insight, what you know. If you share an area of expertise generously with others, you give people reason to respect you and develop a sense of connection with you. Success, what you have done. People want to be successful and they seek out others who have accomplished something to get their advice. If you are successful in anything that you do, there will be people who want to listen to you and connect with you. Ability, what you can do. If you have a high level of ability in an area, others may want to connect with you because of that ability. Excellence connects. Individuals who perform at a high level in their profession often have instant credibility with others. People admire them, they want to be like them, and they feel connected to them. When they speak, others listen. Think about Michael Jordan. He's made more money from endorsements than he ever did playing basketball. Now, is it because of his knowledge or use of the products he endorses? It's because of what he can do with a basketball, his ability. And the last one on the list is sacrifice, how you've lived. If you've made sacrifices, suffered tragedy, or overcome painful obstacles, many people will relate to you. And if you have been able to remain positive yet humble in the midst of life difficulties, others will admire you and will connect with you. Now, these 5 connection factors are just the beginning. In fact, you can probably think of other reasons people connect. The point is that you must take whatever you have and use it to connect with others. The more factors you have and the better that you become at using them, the greater your chance of connecting with people. You must play to your strengths, develop your own style, and cultivate whatever skills you can in order to connect with people. Max Dupree, author of Leadership is an Art and the former CEO of Herman Miller, said, "There may be no single thing more important in our efforts to achieve meaningful work and fulfilling relationships than to learn to practice the art of communication." So let me just recap key messages so far. Leadership is critical because anything worthwhile you achieve in life, in every area of your life, will be with or through other people. Everything rises and falls with leadership. And what is leadership? Leadership is influence. So how can I develop my ability to influence others? Develop the skill of connecting. And how can I develop my skill of connecting? Learn to value others. And there is a shift in perception. You have to take yourself out of the center and place others at the center. This is very important. Take yourself out of the center and place others at the center. Now, let's take a look at a practice that can help you to connect better. So I used to think that it was all about being the best, right? If you want to lead, you have to be the best. If you want people to listen to you, you've got to impress them. But influence is not about impressing people. It's about connecting with them. It's not a logical thing, it's an emotional thing. Remember, I said earlier that people are emotional beings. They're not principally logical, they're principally emotional. And to understand how to connect with people emotionally, we need to understand that we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are, and we're all different. Remember, we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are, and we're all different. Let me try and illustrate what I mean by that. I'm going to put an image here, and when you look at that image, I want you to enter in the chat the first thing that you see. So I'm going to give you a second. Just type in what you see in that image. So how many of you see a black urn? How many of you see 2 people face to face looking at each other? It all depends on where your awareness is. Once I said the opposite of what you first saw, did you see the other? Think about that. Initially, you saw one image, and then when I mentioned the other, did you see the other one as well? But it's the same picture. The same picture viewed differently by different people. So if the picture is the same, then the difference must be in the individual, right? There's something different that happens to the average adult that changes the way that they see things. And that difference is called conditioning. See, we don't see the world as it is, we see it the way that we are. Now, this goes a long way towards explaining why we don't get what we want, we get what we are. The implications for this are enormous, especially as it relates to communication. You know, I see in the chat that many of you saw the face initially. Some of you saw the urn or candlestick first. But isn't that interesting? The same picture, and when you first look at it, people see it differently. Just remember, we all see the world differently. And this simple example illustrates a powerful point. We are all different. We all see the world differently. We have different beliefs, different values, different things that are important to us. We all have different passions, expectations, and tolerances. So to ignore this when trying to connect is to miss the whole point of connecting. And connectors understand this. They know that they have to connect to people on common ground. See, if I talk to you about my beliefs or my values and they're not yours, you're probably not that interested intellectually. There's certainly no emotional resonance. You can't relate to me. You don't have a good feeling about me. Worse yet, if I violate your beliefs while I do it, now, not only do you not get a good feeling, you actually get a bad feeling. No one wants to be told that what they believe is wrong. If you challenge someone's beliefs directly, you are going to get resistance. And if it's their core beliefs, what they really value, they might even want to hurt you. This is the ego in its stripped down form. Its stripped down raw state. It wants to exterminate everyone that doesn't agree with it. So if you want to connect with someone, you've got to go to them. You have to go first, and you need to connect on common ground. Where our beliefs and theirs intersect, that's common ground, and we can connect with them here. And then you can take them where we want them to go. If you don't connect, they won't go with you. Now, this takes energy. It takes energy to connect. There is definitely an investment necessary, but that's really true of anything in life, right? You have to sow if you expect to reap. Now, let's look at these barriers real quick for finding common ground. Assumptions. I already know what others know, feel, and want. We make generalizations when we should be making observations. When you make assumptions, you stop paying attention to people and miss clues that would help you to find common ground with them. Here is a short comical example of how we make assumptions. In John's book, he tells the story of a traveler between flights. Let me tell you, I love this story. This traveler goes into a lounge and buys a small package of cookies and then sits down to read a newspaper. She became aware of a rustling noise and looked to see a neatly dressed man helping himself to cookies. She didn't want to make a scene, so she leaned over and took a cookie herself, hoping that he would get the message. As time passed, she thought she had been successful, but then she heard the rustling again. She couldn't believe it. He was helping himself to another cookie. Now there was only one cookie left. While she watched in disbelief, the man broke the remaining cookie in two, pushed half across to her, popped the other half into his mouth, and left. The traveler was still furious some time later when her flight was called. When she opened her handbag to get her ticket, imagine how shocked and embarrassed she was when she looked in there and found her pack of unopened cookies. Too often, we are guilty of making assumptions about people, and this is a great story to prove that point. Now, the next barrier is arrogance. I don't need to know what others know, feel, or want. John stated in his book, you can't build a relationship with everybody in the room when you don't care about anybody in the room. Think about that. You can't build a relationship with everybody in the room when you don't care about anybody in the room. Indifference. I don't care to know what others know, feel, or want. Indifference is a form of selfishness. Control. I don't want others to know what I know, feel, or want. Very important. Connecting requires vulnerability. Now, here are some choices that we can make to find common ground. Availability. I will choose to spend time with others. Listening. I will listen my way to common ground. Questions. I will be interested enough to ask questions. Thoughtfulness. I will think of others and look for ways to thank them. Openness. I will let people in my life. Likability. I will care about people. Humility. I will think of myself less so that I can think of others more. Adaptability. I will move from my world to theirs. Now, as I mentioned before, this takes energy. It takes energy to connect. It's an investment. Now, before I close today, I would like to give you a few easy key points to remember when trying to connect with others one-on-one and in groups. The skills that you learn to connect at one level can be used to start connecting at the next level. And here in this slide, you will see easy, practical ideas to help you to connect one-on-one and in group settings. When connecting one-on-one, you need to show interest in the person that you're trying to connect with. Place value on that person and put his or her interest ahead of your own. Most importantly, express gratitude to and for that person. And remember, the same key concepts for connecting one-on-one can apply to connecting in a group. Remember to make it your goal to add value to everyone in the group. And as I said earlier when we started, I'm sure that some of what I've shared today you might have heard before. But the biggest gap in most of our lives is between what we know and what we actually do. So I continue to encourage you. Ask yourself, how well do I do that when you hear something that you've heard before? Now, I'm about to wrap up our presentation, but before I do, I want to express how excited and happy I am to share with you today. It's really been such a privilege to share with you the things that are going to make the biggest impact on your career and business as you learn to connect with others. Remember that change is an event. It's not an event, it's a process. We have a tendency to overestimate the event and a tendency to underestimate the process, but it is a process and you have to keep that in mind. You see, an event, which is important, won't develop you as a communicator and connector, but it can get you started on becoming better. If you think about it, to develop as a communicator and connector, we're talking about changing our behaviors. And unfortunately, we can't just snap our fingers and be changed. So we can continue to communicate and connect the way that we have been, or we can choose to intentionally develop these skills to increase our influence and leadership. So today we've briefly touched on the importance of making real connections in order to increase our influence. Now imagine doing a deeper dive into these lessons in a group setting or individually in private coaching sessions. As I mentioned at the beginning, I do want to offer you the opportunity to continue if you are ready to become a great communicator and connector. I want to invite you and encourage you to join me in one of my mastermind groups. I'm actually going to be starting 2 next month. If you're not familiar with how a mastermind works, a mastermind group is a group of like-minded individuals meeting once a week for 5 weeks. We meet for an hour each week and spend time doing a deep dive into each of the connecting principles and practices found in John's book, Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. In addition, as a member of the mastermind group, you will also have access to a group coaching session and additional training and resources. It's really an amazing experience. Plus, I'm offering special pricing for everyone that joined today. So if you're interested in learning more, please feel free to reach out to me via my email, which is mayrafipps@gmail.com, or feel free to give me a call at 502-550-4551. Finally, as I mentioned, I will be sending out a quick survey where you can share your feedback on today's workshop and send me any follow-up questions that you may have. I hope that this session added value to you today. And thank you so much for your attentiveness and for the little internet hiccup. And thank you so much for having me. It's really been an honor being here with you today. Again, my name is Mayra Phipps. I'm a trainer and coach with the John Maxwell team, and I want you to have a fantastic afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayra. That was awesome. And now's your opportunity. If you'd like to ask Mayra some questions or some comments, go ahead and put them in the chat, and we'll get right to them. And we'll get those answers for you. So Myra, I'd like to ask though, you had so many great points. I made a ton of notes, but step one to kind of get started in your everyday life. I mean, where would you tell somebody to start practicing some of these things? Where would you what would be the first thing you would tell someone to do?
Yeah, so I think, a key point, which I mentioned in the presentation, is taking yourself out of the center. You have to really take yourself out of the center and put that other person in the center. There's a couple quick little things that you can apply to help you with that. So for example, if you have someone that you're trying to connect with, whether it's one-on-one or in a group, I always say, then this is something you have to do mentally, of course, but when you go to communicate with that person, slap a 10. So like imagine a sticky note with a 10 and put it on their forehead. And then what you do is that you're going to try to have that person see that 10. So meaning that when you're communicating with that person, you are adding so much value and helping them see how important and valuable they are. So it's all about the other person. And then there's also a very simple exercise, and this is more if you want to, if you have an employee or even a friend or, relative or whatever the case may be, it can be applied in family life and in work life. You will just have to kind of tweak the content for either one. But what you can do is this very simple exercise, and you have to communicate it with the other person where you both agree that for whatever certain amount of time, you guys are going to write 3 questions. What went right? Okay. What went wrong? And what can I do differently? And the key to this is to write down the things that have happened, like the most important things that have happened to you in that day. So if it's family, then it's not going to be related to family or work life. It could be everything, right? But if you do this at work, it's going to be all work related. So what you want you and the other person to do is that you are going to communicate with each other before anybody else. So you guys are going to be kind of like, your VIPs for each other. And the most important things that happen to you during that day, you're going to communicate with each other before anybody else, thinking about what went right, what went wrong, and what can you do differently within your day. And this is a great exercise to really build like really strong relationships. And it's, like I said, you can use it family life and work life as well.
Thank you. Sloy says, that was awesome, and she thrives off people and never meets a stranger. These tools definitely can improve those new and familiar connections.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
And Sloy, I just want to say, I saw a candlestick first too. I noticed you did that.
Now, I've seen this so many times, I can't remember which one I saw first, but
So Mayra, there's kind of different ways or different levels of communicating. Like the way you communicate with your coworkers is different than how you would communicate with someone in a line in a coffee shop, for example, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think there definitely is, because and it obviously, if you meet someone at the coffee shop, or you don't have that connection already, where with your employees or coworkers, you already have some kind of common ground, right? You're both working at the same company. You might be in similar roles or do similar work. So you already have some kind of connection that you can pull off of when communicating to that person that you already know. If you meet someone that you're interested in connecting with, first and foremost, you have to have that interest. So if you remembering back to those barriers, you have to make sure that you really do have that interest, and you have to be genuine, because you don't want, people can read through you. They can tell when you're really interested or not. One of the greatest things that I've learned through this process is that, you almost have to be like a little detective. And you have to practice. Like I said, it's a skill that you need to practice, but you have to have that interest. You have to be willing to go first. You have to be willing to ask that question. Open-ended questions are amazing. Always keeping that in mind. Again, that goes to one of those things that you've heard before, but how well do you do it? You know, we've learned very early on that open-ended questions really keep that conversation going. But so many times we find ourselves asking yes and no questions, you know? So realizing that you have to make that conscious effort to ask those open-ended questions and keep the conversation going. It does take effort. Not every conversation is going to flow as you expect, but knowing that you can continue that conversation and go first and ask the questions and really find common ground is very, very important.
Nice. Lisa wants to know what was the name of that book again? And maybe you can talk a little bit about some of the other books that John's done.
Sure. So John, yes. So John Maxwell has an incredible amount of books and resources that he's published. This particular book, it's called Everyone Communicates, Few Connect. Again, everyone communicates, few connect. He has, another book that's very similar that ties well to this book is Becoming a Person of Influence. Because like, if you remember during the presentation, I talk a lot about influence and the importance of building that influence as a leader. He has a book that's called Becoming a Person of Influence that ties very, very well with this one as well. And then he has some that are specifically like Leadership Gold that are specifically on leadership.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So Mary asks, she says, you mentioned during your presentation a chronological order or funnel of steps to take to become effective in connecting. Can you repeat those steps again?
Sure. Let me go back, see if I can you still see my slide?
Yeah, yep.
Okay.
You're doing good.
And I'm not sure, are you referring to this particular slide where you have specific steps on connecting?
It'll take a sec for that to come
Yep,
through.
let's see if, yeah.
But I think so.
Yep. So just remembering, when you're trying to connect, whether on one-on-one or in a group, the first thing is to have interest and then putting that value on the person. The key, and that's where you're taking yourself out of the center, right? And putting that person in the center is that put their interest ahead of your own. And then expressing just gratitude, thank you, thanking that person for that connection. Those are really very basic key steps, and you can apply that throughout, your career, family life. This is great information to keep in mind when you're networking with people. Is making sure that you're putting their interest ahead of your own. One of the questions I get a lot is that when I'm networking with people, how can I build those connections? The first thing is that you have to keep in mind is that when you're going into like a networking group or a networking event, you're really there, your focus being to make connections, not selling yourself or selling your service, but to genuinely making connections. So you always want to put that other person's interest ahead of your own.
Right. So Mary says, no, it was more along the lines what you do first, then the next step. It wasn't a slide.
Okay, let's see. And it's kind of hard. So much information.
Yeah, definitely.
Think of where it was. I wonder if it was the 5 factors for connecting. Well, let me see if I can get more specific and maybe we can connect afterwards and figure out exactly, and I can provide you with more detail for sure.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that'll be good. Mary, just reach out to Mayra. She'd be happy about that. Make
sure that I get you what you need for sure.
So, yeah. So if anybody else has any questions, go ahead and put those in the chat. We'll talk to Mayra about them. But this has been really, really, really impressive stuff.
Well, good. I'm glad you enjoyed it. As I mentioned, I have a great privilege of sharing with all of you, the information that John has published and what he shares with others as well. and I would be happy to answer any additional questions. I did mention our masterminds. We have 2 coming up next month, so feel free to reach out to me if you would like more information about that. We do like a really deep dive into these concepts, so you would have time to really not only learn them, but practice them. So it's a really great opportunity. So if you'd like more information on that, feel free to reach out to me for sure.
Yeah. I think that's all the questions we have. So we'll kind of wrap up today. Mayra, that was awesome. That was really great. Like I said, I took a ton of notes. Definitely going to get John's book, and I'll probably be reaching out to you myself. So thank you for joining us today, and I'd like to have you come back and share some more at some point. This has been very helpful to me.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Anytime. Just let me know. I'd be happy to. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining and for allowing me this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. And look for Mayra's survey in a little while from now, and feel free to reach out to her. She's a great resource. Don't pass it up. So, well, thanks again, Mayra. And with that, we'll say goodbye. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And please join us again next Wednesday for another Wednesday webinar. Have a good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.